High in the mountains of Greece is Delphi, where the ruins of the temple of Apollo remain. It once rose in front of a theater where tragedies and comedies were performed. When ancient Greeks approached the temple of Apollo that housed the oracle at Delphi, they were met with several things before they even entered the temple. On the east end of the temple was an image of Apollo and the Muses, perhaps not a surprising image on Apollo's temple. However, there was on the west end of the temple an image of Dionysus and the Thyiads. The Thyiads were the women who were devoted to the worship of Dionysus. On the forecourt of the temple was the maxim, "Know thyself." Now we're familiar with the maxim, "Know thyself." This is something that Socrates famously said that he was interested in doing, trying to know himself. What does it mean to know yourself? And what does it say that it's associated with Apollo and the Muses and with Dionysus and the Thyiads? Now, with Apollo and the Muses, there are a few things to note here. One, Apollo is the god of the sun. He is the god who rides the chariot of the sun across the sky. The sun, of course, is associated with enlightenment. You came to the oracle at Delphi to gain some sort of knowledge, some sort of prophetic knowledge. You gain enlightenment from Apollo. Apollo is also the leader of the Muses, though, and the Muses are not just the arts, but they're also history and the sciences. All of this points to various ways that you need to come to know yourself. You need to know your history, and you need to come to terms with your history. Not just your personal history, but the history of your peoples, of your culture, of the world itself, of humankind. Who you are is necessarily a result of who you were. And if you're not happy with who you are, it's probably because you're not happy with who you were. And at the same time, if you've ever said yes to any aspect of your life, then you have to say yes to everything that ever happened in your life. Because to have said no to any of it is to say no to that great joy, that wonderfulness that you experienced. And that's why it's important to come to understand human history and even human prehistory and to come to terms with it. If you don't understand what sort of organism humans are, then you really cannot understand yourself. You have to understand yourself biologically. You have to understand your evolved psychology, your evolved social nature, the universals that unite all human beings. Yes, the universals that unite all human beings. And the differences that emerged over time. We need to understand that all of our differences stem from a common humanity. As Terence said, I am human and nothing human is foreign to me. There is no experience that you have had that I cannot understand and that cannot be understood by another human being. Now, for about 80% of the population, this will be sufficient. But there's another 20% of the population, which is a fairly large percentage of the population, and are primarily the creative percentage of the population, for whom there needs to be much more. Much more needs to be understood because these people are not neurotypical. If you have ADD or ADHD, if you are bipolar or have depression, if you have anxiety or schizophrenia or autism or dyslexia, you also have to come to terms and come to understand the particular ways in which your brain works in order to reach the point of knowing yourself. It's extra work beyond what the majority of people have to do, but if you have these differences, you're probably familiar with having to do extra work anyway. You have to come to understand not just your own differences, but the way that people perceive you. And that can be difficult, that can be troubling, even to some degree. But it's something that has to be done if you want to truly understand yourself. In order to truly understand yourself, you not only have to know yourself, you have to understand how other people perceive you. That is part of knowing yourself. You have to understand how you appear to other people. Part of knowing yourself is knowing your appearance. Now, what what about Dionysus? Dionysus is a different creature entirely. Dionysus is the god of, well, just about everything. He he brings together everything. He is a bit of a trickster god. He is also the god of tragedy, of theater. All the world is a stage and we are but actors upon it. And Dionysus brings that and says, yes, you are masks. You have masks. You're wearing masks. And in order to know yourself, you have to know what your masks are. The fact of the matter is that we present ourselves in very different ways in very different circumstances. You're not the same at work or at different jobs. You're not the same at school. You're not the same to your parents, to your wife, to your children, to your loved ones, to your friends. You're different in each of those situations. And sometimes those differences most notably come out when you sort of mix things up a little bit. If you have your friends over to your house with your wife there, your wife would be like, well, why are you behaving that way? You don't ever behave that way with me. And maybe you're holding yourself back and your friends are like, oh, you're not nearly as much fun as you used to be. But the fact of the matter is that, you're coming into a conflict with the different kind of masks that you're wearing in these different social situations. And that's exactly what you're doing. You're wearing different masks. But those masks, are they not yourself? Of course they are. They're different aspects of yourself. And understanding that is going to help you to understand who you are yourself. So, in order to come to understand yourself, to know yourself, there's a lot of work involved. A lot of work involved. And most people are not willing to do it. Most people can get by without it, probably. But will they be happy? Will knowing yourself make you happy? And that's difficult to say. What sorts of things can make you happy? Having enough money that you're not worried probably is important. Having friends and virtuous friends, oh, most definitely is important. There's really good evidence that being married makes you happy. Now, of course, it helps if you're married to somebody who makes you happy. All of these things are necessary components of being happy. But what about knowing yourself? I think ultimately that's required too. Coming to know yourself, being true to yourself. And you can't be true to yourself if you don't know the truth about yourself. And that's why you have to access Apollo and the Muses and Dionysus and the Thyiads. You have to be rational and ecstatic. You have to gain enlightenment and knowledge. And understand your deep true self and the masks that you create. And in the end, know your history and come to terms with it. Because who you are is a necessary result of who you were.